There is an entire world of feminist mythology that does not get nearly enough attention. There are women and goddesses who were villainized for their power, erased for their refusal to comply, and rewritten out of their own stories for being too much. When I started building my business, I realized there was this correlation between these mythological powerhouses and the experience of being a female entrepreneur that is just impossible to ignore. Hello, my beautiful entrepreneurs. My name is Tabitha, and welcome to A Hot Mess Builds an Empire. I help day one entrepreneurs take that first terrifying leap into business ownership without completely losing their minds in the process. This channel is for the people who are standing on the edge of something really scary, but also equally just as marvelous, wondering if they are absolutely unhinged for even considering the jump. In 10 days, on March 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am hosting the second The Mess Hall meetup, and this time we are doing a workshop. We are workshopping rate sheets, and I'm providing a template that you can download and fill in along with the workshop, where we're going to be bundling packages together, creating a la carte services, and just kind of talking through how to cater yourself to other budgets instead of feeling like you have to change your prices to be in a safe or more marketable area. And I just think it's going to be a really fantastic workshop. I think it's something that's going to be very helpful. It's only $5 to join, and you can find the link to it in my Stan store, which is in this YouTube description. You know, with my trademark brand, World Her Story, I do a lot of women's history research, but I also really enjoy doing like feminist mythology research. And there are some women who are sort of on the edge of both of those things as well. And there's always a lot of really cool women in history that you can relate to and look at their entrepreneurial careers and just kind of see all the obstacles they overcame. And I've done a women's history episode about this. But I really wanted to dive into feminist mythology today and just kind of talk about these different mythological powerhouses that I refer to them as, that can just kind of teach you something about being an entrepreneur, or you can kind of empower their point of view or sort of how they showed up. And I want to talk about women that just have a bad rep for no reason other than being, inconvenient to the patriarchy, right? So let's get started with one of my favorites, Lilith. I have been diving into Lilith mythology and perspectives a lot lately, and I'm not sure why, but I think sometimes there are just characters in history that kind of speak to you, or like mythology that speak to you, that are just somebody you kind of latch onto for the time being because there's something in them that you need. And Lilith is that for me right now. There's just something about her setting boundaries from the moment she was created. And if you don't know the mythology behind Lilith, which is kind of like a Hebrew Mesopotamian mythology, Lilith was made from the same earth and made as an equal to Adam. And I'm talking about the Adam of Adam and Eve, Adam. And Lilith came first before Eve is the mythology. But she refused to be a subordinate. She refused to comply. She refused to be second then. And she walked away from everything. But she was villainized. She was made into a demon. She was made into, I think one of the things I've seen about her is that she was like a child snatcher and a creature of the night. And, she just became this horrible figure in mythology. And it was all because she put up these boundaries immediately that she just was not going to deal with that. Like, she was created and she was like, no, absolutely not. And I think there's something to be said for the first woman created said no and was immediately villainized by a man. So there's just so much to unpack with that. But she was written out. She was replaced with Eve. And she was rewritten as this evil figure, but she's just so much more than that. And I think there's something really powerful about putting in boundaries and refusing to be subordinate, not just to the patriarchy, but putting up boundaries in general for yourself and, you know, protecting your business, protecting your energy. And what did I have here? Sorry, my ADHD is really crazy today. And I'm like, usually I can hyper focus, but I just can't today. Oh, you know, we talk about women who negotiate firmly are aggressive. Women who discuss anything that's sensitive in the workplace can be, sorry, not sensitive in the workplace, but discuss concerns in the workplace can be considered sensitive. I've been called hysterical when I talk to my boss as calmly as I am talking right now, who is someone who doesn't work with my company anymore, thank goodness. But you know, the business parallel here is your refusal to be diminished is not a character flaw. It is the most Lilith thing you can do. That's what I wrote down. So don't let people rewrite your narrative, right? Like, don't give anybody that opportunity to take your power away from you, to take your voice away from you, and hold fast on your boundaries that you have in place for you and your business. So channel Lilith, right? For this particular area. I think I am really hooked on Lilith right now just because of the boundaries aspect. I have a tendency to always say yes for everything for my business. Just yes to it all, to everything. And it just gets me in so much trouble with myself. It makes me exhausted, it makes me tired, and it makes it harder to show up. So, you know, I have recently asked for help. Crazy, I know. But it's just one of those things where sometimes you need to have boundaries for yourself in place where you're protecting your energy. You're protecting the Lilith in you. And you know, my sister also is drawn to Lilith, I believe, for other reasons, but she's just such an interesting character in mythology. And she's a character that shows up like spiritually as well. And there's just something so strong about her. Like I said, there's really a lot of deep diving that could be done here where it's like she was the first woman created equal to a man. And she just was like, I'm out of here. Nope, this is not for Lilith. This is this is not for Lilith at all. And you know, her name cracks me up in a TV sense because there's Lilith, the character from she got started in Cheers but then moved on to Frasier, if anybody recalls the show. And you know, I just think that she was painted as like this horrible person or this difficult person. And I think it stems from, I think they felt inspired by Lilith from mythology to kind of put into this psychiatrist who was presented as difficult or crazy or whatever. And, you know, every time I would see Lilith, the character, come on the TV show, I just kind of got like a little jealous of her for being so, sure of herself, for being so self-aware. And, you know, the perspective that was put on by Frasier and sort of like where the studio audience was to laugh. And, you know, it just shows that like the emphasis changes the perspective, right? And, you know, I just think there's something so great about Lilith, truly. Like, just her as like this character in mythology is just so fascinating. It's so fascinating. And there's really a lot that can be taken from the boundaries she put in place for herself and her well-being and walking away from a situation. You know, there's a lot that can be taken from that for you and your business. And, you know, I truly have a hard time with that, as I was saying before. So, you know, I'm trying to channel my inner Lilith right now and just put some boundaries in place so I get rest, because I can't keep showing up tired, right? Because it's harder to be creative when you're tired, and it's harder to constantly show up consistently when you're tired. So, you know, I did ask for help recently and to take a couple things off my plate. And I think it's going to be helpful. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to have those boundaries for yourself where you're like, listen, I got to cut this off at 10 o'clock tonight. As is, it's 4:50 in the morning. And I'm recording because I want to get a video in for today. So it's like, I'm pushing myself, and I need to be more respectful of my rest. So that's where Lilith would come in with those amazing boundaries that she has. The next woman we're going to talk about is Niwa. She is from Chinese mythology, and her story is fascinating. So I have some notes here that I want to read off of because I want to get her story right, because I'm not as familiar with Chinese mythology. But Niwa was one of the most important figures in Chinese mythology and one of the least discussed outside of it. And you guys, it's such a loss when women in history or women in mythology are just not discussed at the length as to what they deserve, right? But she's a creator goddess, and she's part woman, part serpent. And she's credited with creating humanity itself, molding the first humans from Earth with her own hands. But I want to talk about what she did later that I think is more applicable to business aspects. And that is when the pillars of heaven collapsed and the sky broke open and the world was literally falling apart, Niwa fixed it. And she did it by melting down 5 colored stones and patching the sky, cut the legs off a giant tortoise to use as new pillars, and put the world back together herself. And you know what she did? She didn't stay around waiting for credit. She just kind of walked away from it and got on with her life. But she used her skills to fix this situation. And I think, the lesson that I have here is the business parallel is it takes a specific kind of entrepreneur to be very self-aware, to watch what's going on and to fix everything and to continue moving on. Now, I don't think that we should follow in Niwa's footsteps in terms of just kind of walking away and not taking credit, because like I have said in another video, that I think there's something very empowering about having like an accomplishment resume for yourself, where it's just kind of like, this is what I fixed today. This is what I did today. This is what propelled me forward today. That I think like when we have these list of accomplishments, this resume of accomplishments, if you will, there are times where things get very challenging, things get very difficult, things get very tough. And you can kind of go back and look at this resume of accomplishments and go, I got through all of this though. I got through all of this. So let's lean on this strength that I somehow managed to find to get through these challenging situations. And we're going to apply it to this situation, right? And I want you to give yourself credit, because there's so much that we go through as entrepreneurs in general. And then there are additional things that you face in more marginalized communities, right? As it goes across the board. When it starts with women, when it goes to Black women, when it goes to trans women, when you start going to the more marginalized communities, like things just get more and more difficult unnecessarily, I think. Like, it doesn't have to be difficult, but the world is not a nice place. And I just don't want you to disappear from your own story the way Niwa did. She kind of fixed the world and walked away and moved on to bigger and better things for herself. But I don't want that part for you. I don't, in terms of like the not giving yourself credit and the not hanging back to see the fruits of your labor and stuff like that. Like, I just think there's something so great about being proud of what it is that you've done and sticking around and seeing what happens with that. But in terms of finding that problem solving and that scrappiness of being able to use your skill sets to fix problems, I think there's something really great about that we can take away from Niwa. Especially because you do the work every single day for your business. Even if it's like a 15-minute task that's all you can spare for today because it's a busy day, you've done something for your business, and that's just so amazing. So keep it up, keep doing it, channel that Niwa energy of problem solving, and like challenges that you face are just, you're just going to find this strength that is, you're wondering where it comes from, right? But when you want something so badly, you really truly make it work with the skills that it is that you have, that maybe even sometimes you don't realize. Like, there are a lot of transferable skills that I have from my current job that I apply to being an entrepreneur. And there are times where I'm just at work and I will do something, and I will create a macro in Excel, or somebody will ask me a question that kind of inspires an answer to create something at work. And I'm just kind of like, I could totally do this for Tap the Bear Studios. And it's just very interesting how there are things that hit me in my transferable skill set. And it's only recently that I realized I have a transferable skill set, right? Like, because I've kept my full-time traditional job and my business so separate. I've never acknowledged that the two shall meet, right? And there's just something really interesting about looking at the skill set that I have because of my traditional job and going, I could use this more often with my business, or I could do this for my business, or I could do that for my business. Like, it's just very interesting to see my own self-awareness and my own problem solving grow over the last year or two, just by acknowledging that I have skill sets that can move from thing to thing. It's not just, this is just reserved for my traditional job and I'm not going to use it at all. I think it's because I turned that part of myself off so quickly, because I just, when you're working a traditional job and you're building a business and you really want your business to be your full-time job, like, this gets turned off quite quickly when I get home or before I go to work, because I just want to focus so badly on being an entrepreneur. That I don't lean into the skill set that I have. I don't lean into the problem solving skills that I have. So Niwa, energy is something I'm working on, and it's something that is very helpful for you too. Now, I was doing my best to practice the pronunciation of everything, but this one just comes up the Morgan, and I hope that I'm saying that right, like that it's not, that there isn't like an Irish pronunciation to it, but this is from Celtic mythology. And I think the Morgan is kind of one of those more misunderstood characters in Celtic mythology, and she is a goddess of fate, war, and sovereignty, and kind of transformation. And she appears as a crow and sometimes as three women, but always as a force that cannot be ignored. And here's what most people, sorry, I keep reading my notes. I'm telling you guys, today my ADHD has me all over the map. I've tried recording this episode like 20 times already because I can't focus today, but I'm showing up anyway. But what most people get wrong about the Morgan is she was not a warrior in the traditional sense. She did not pick up a sword and fight in the battlefield. She shaped outcomes. She showed up in the chaos and influenced what happened next, which I think is just so interesting. Because she was the strategy behind the battle, the force that decided which way the wind blew. And I love this look, this perspective so much for business, because we are in total control of the strategy of the chaos, right? And whether we realize it or not, all the actions that we take and all the things that we do or don't do have a positive and or negative impact on what it is that we're accomplishing for our business, how it is that we're moving forward, how it is that we're evolving. And, there is a piece of the Morgan within us all. Now, her particular story is she was just, the men were terrified of her because her power was not something they could fight directly. Now, she did offer her alliance to the hero Cu Holland. I think I'm saying it right. I was practicing before this to try and say it in Irish nicely. But he rejected her, and he didn't recognize the power that was being offered to him, and he could not handle a force he did not understand and turned her away. And it didn't go well for him. It did not go well for him at all. But there is a kind of woman in business who does not operate according to a traditional playbook. which I think, I think everyone should be writing their own playbook. I don't think I talk about how there's no wrong way to be an entrepreneur. There's no right way to being an entrepreneur, but there are easier ways to being an entrepreneur. And, that's why I wanted to create this channel, is to talk about the easier ways of getting through certain situations, the easier ways to being an entrepreneur. And, I think there's something to take away from the Morgan, with just like, you shape the influence, you shape the outcome. You have way more strategy in the chaos of running your business than you realize. And you get to decide where the wind blows with your business, right? So take it easy with that power, but also realize you have that power. Realize that this is not something that anything can avalanche out of control and then you don't know what to do. And then it's like uncontrollable, and that's not going to happen, right? Like, you just have to realize this power that you have over yourself and your business is really great. And you can influence however it is that you want to go. What did I write? Oh, show up in your chaos, shape your outcomes, and let the people who cannot recognize what you're doing figure it out eventually. Yeah, I think I'm referring to your audience here and your community here, because people will gravitate towards you and your power. People will gravitate towards you and however it is that you're evolving. And, my business coach, she has evolved so much over the last like 13 years that I've been following her. And there are points of her journey that, although I respected, right, they just weren't for me. It didn't speak to me. And that's okay. But I still loved following her anyway, because she just was she is so unapologetically herself, and so unapologetically an entrepreneur, that there's just something so cool about her. And I feel like she really channels the Morgan, right? Because she just shapes her outcome. She knows which way to make the wind blow. And sure, do we all fly by the seat of our pants sometimes? Absolutely, yes. But it doesn't mean that you can't use your power to put some things into action and just see what happens and throw it in a direction, right? Or like just throw something at the wall and see what sticks. But we have so much influence over what goes on in our business. And I think that's a power we need to realize. That's something that took me a long time to realize, that I was in control and I had the power to do whatever it is that I wanted to do with my business. And that's why when I stopped being an entrepreneur for 2 years, that was like a really tough 2 years for me, because I just was so miserable, because I felt like a failure. I felt like I had given up on a dream that I've had for nearly my whole life. Was to not be in a traditional work environment and situation. And, I think I did not utilize my Morgan energy as much as I probably could have and should have. So, show up authentically for yourself, right? Not just like show up authentically for your community or your content or anything like that. I'm talking about showing up authentically for your business, for yourself, because everything that you do is going to be influenced in a direction, or this way or the other way. And there's something so cool about the Morgan's influence on battles and stuff like that, and transforming a culture with her power, that you have the same ability as her. You have the same ability to transform whatever it is that you need to transform with your business. And, normally we call that a pivot. But I think transformation sounds way cooler. So maybe I'm going to start using that from now on. I have had a recent hard transformation with my business instead of a hard pivot. But yeah, so that is number 3, the Morgan. And now we're moving on to number 4. Now, this one I'm so not familiar with. I'm actually, after I kind of get over my little Lilith obsession here, I'm really gonna try and deep dive into like Mexico and South, into South America, Latin America, just really embracing like these amazing Aztec, Mayan, um, Bolivian, Peruvian, Inca uh, cultures for their mythology, and it's something that I've never dived into before. I think because it's one of those things where like Greek mythology is everywhere, right? Like it's just so easy to dive into Greek mythology, and it's so easy to dive into European mythology, especially, you know, because it comes from a white skinned culture, right? It's so much easier to find information about that. And um, there's a book I'm reading right now that the title is escaping me at this moment in time, but she references the medieval times, and how they all the philosophers and sort of educators and scribes of the medieval times relied on Greek mythology. So it's so embedded in our culture. It's so embedded in what it is that we do when it comes to our reference to women, when it comes to our reference to women's roles, and when it comes to our mythologies about things. Like it's just so easy to reference because it's just so ingrained. So this is something that I'm going to explore after my little Lilith phase here. But Ishal is a Mayan goddess and one of the most layered and complex figures. She's associated with the moon, with medicine, with weaving, and with floods, which sounds a little contradictory, but when you sit with that combination for a minute, you realize it makes a lot of sense. So she holds healing and destruction in the same hands. She can bring a flood that wipes out the harvest and the medicine that saves the life. She contains both, and she does not apologize for either. Yes, we hold this same power. Now, before I dive into it, let me finish her story. In some traditions, she's depicted as an old woman with a snake on her head and a jug that pours rain, which is not a conventional image of a goddess, but she's not presented as like this overly beautiful figure that makes people comfortable, right? She's presented as wisdom. And she is ancient and powerful and complicated, and she does not shrink herself to become more palatable. So for my business parallel I have for this section, I have women entrepreneurs are constantly asked to be one thing. Niche down, niche down. Either the warm, approachable helper or the serious, powerful businesswoman. You can't be both. Either the creative visionary or the strategic operator, because you can't be both. Ishel says no to that false binary entirely. And something that took me a long time to learn, but I learned it and I'm sharing it. You're a human being that contains multitudes, especially as a female entrepreneur. Um, you know, your complexity is not a liability, it's the whole point. And that's something that I've been embracing a lot lately with my content is talking more about women's history, talking more about mythology, talking more about the heavy things that I carry when I show up here. Talking more about traveling solo and things of that nature. Like I, I asked for feedback on my YouTube and I received it. Which I received the feedback that I should have more specific titles, which that's fair. Mine are pretty generically vague, but also like branch out into my interests and what it is that I do and what it is that I love and what it is that I talk about and kind of affiliate it to being an entrepreneur. And there's just something that's so great about diving into these things that I'm so interested in because I'm having way more fun with my content creation. And there's something really cool to be said for that. Plus, I'm having a lot of fun sitting here, like comparing business for women, specifically women entrepreneurs, and comparing it to women in mythology. This has been a fun episode to write, although my focus is just crap today. It's so bad. I really had a lot of fun putting this episode together because I got to learn about more women in mythology because I wanted to represent diverse cultures. And, I also wanted to represent like diverse perspectives. I didn't just want it to be about women being rewritten. I wanted it to be about significant women in mythology that maybe you've never heard of. I'm really big on lesser known women in history for World Her Story. So I think it's fair to say I was hoping to find a few characters in mythology that you were not familiar with. And but yeah, I love that Ishal is like this character that um is just so unapologetically herself. There's just something so great about that. And that's something that I'm trying to channel here lately for my business. And I think it's going well. Like I noticed there's like an uptick in my views, and I gained followers on different platforms just for showing up and saying quirky things and being a nerd and being a dork. And um, you know, I I'm building my legacy, right? That is what I am building, and I think it's really important that that legacy contains as many layers of myself as I have available to share. Um, and lastly, I have a note here. Ishelle did not shrink for anyone, and she's still being talked about thousands of years later. I think that's just so beautiful. Like after thousands of years, you're this balanced figure that is both healing and destruction. And just think there's something so great about like just thinking about the natural ways of the earth where a flood comes through, and then once things kind of dissipate, there's new life that comes from that flood. And there's something to be said for doing that with your business. Like you may have to destroy things sometimes to build it better. And I've done that before. My transformation from being a scrappy little travel blogger and travel photographer and just kind of like moving forward into all the things that it is that I want to do, like this transformation. I'm doing my best to show up and be unapologetically myself. And I think Ashal would be really proud of the destruction that I think was required to rebuild and heal. And there's something really cool about inadvertently challenging my inner Ishal from Mayan mythology. I don't know if I said that she was from Mayan mythology. I may have forgotten, but yeah, she is a Mayan goddess. And as I wrap this episode up, I just want women in business and women entrepreneurs and women in management and leadership and women who are working for the man right now. I just want you to think about these mythological women that I went over and just kind of think about who you're channeling right now or who you might need to channel right now. I think Lilith for me, like I said, is a really big one right now because I need to work on my boundaries, mostly with myself. But, I think there's also boundaries that I can put in place at work where I can keep people at arm's length. And I'm always like, yes, I'll do this project. Yes, I'll do this project. Yes, I'll take over this department. Yes, I'll take over that department. I say yes a lot because I'm always like up for a challenge. I'm always up for proving myself. I'm always up for all these massive projects. And while it's a lot of fun, at the same time, I'm beat. I'm beat. I also want you to think about the next time someone says that you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're too intimidating. And I want you to think about these women and realize that they were too much in some sense. And look at how freaking cool they are, right? Um, they're just so amazing, and you are in good company. You're in good company. So the next time somebody may say something like that to you, just remember these women. Just remember Lilith setting her boundaries and Niwa being incredibly resourceful and the Morgan shaping destinies and influencing culture and stuff like that. I want you guys to think about that stuff. And Ishal holding destruction and healing in the balance, right? Like she's just so powerful and really cool. So just channel who it is that you need to channel to get through whatever situation it is that you're in. And I might do another episode like this because this was a lot of fun for me, and I hope it was a lot of fun for you. Even though my focus has been terrible this episode, I do apologize. But what can you do? ADHD brain, when it's gone, she gone. So just a reminder, the mess hall is May 23rd this month. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's only $5 to join. We're going to be going over a workshop of rate sheets and building packages that are priced for different budgets for clients, not priced differently for you to feel comfortable and safe about the price that maybe you see more marketable. And I hope that makes sense. So we're going to be making some packages that still pay you what you're worth, but also address different budgets that people are going to have, that clients are going to have. So um, I hope to see you there. The link to that is in this description. It leads to my stand store. It's called the Mess Hall. And there are a couple dates in there that you can pick. And it's only $5 for each session to join. It's a community for day one entrepreneurs, but we happen to be doing a workshop this month. So I hope to see you there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I will see you next time.